Today's video is going to be jam-packed with a bunch of new information for Season 1 feedback that 343 has been receiving from the player base. They went into a deep dive on the things that they are aware of that the community wants and the fixes that they'll be implementing in future seasons and in Season 2. And I'll be breaking all of it down for you. Make sure you all click that like button to support future Halo news videos and subscribe if you're new here and you want to stay absolutely up to date on all the latest happenings in the world of Halo Infinite. And while this blog mainly focuses on things like the accessibility of the game, the audio, multiplayer, PC, sandbox, and the UI teams, there will be another blog post coming here soon that covers some of the live teams areas such as customization, battle pass, shop, and events, things like that. That will be in a future video for you guys, so stay tuned for that. Now, to set expectations right, 343 said to please keep in mind that this is not meant to cover all the upcoming work that they have planned for Halo Infinite, nor does it have specific timelines for every single item that they mention in this blog post. It will, however, cover many of the comment feedback areas that they've seen raised and discussed on the internet with a focus on what is landing in Season 2. Now, I'm going to give you guys a quick summary at the beginning of this video on what is coming with Season 2. However, I highly suggest to stay tuned throughout the entirety of the video for things like Desync that won't be making it at the beginning of Season 2, but one of the major problems with the game that needs to be addressed is mentioned in this post. So, under audio, the ability to hear an opponent's shield recharge sound will be reduced to prevent providing too much information about a player's location in the game and multiplayer, and the volume of the Grunt Birthday Party sound effect will be increased in campaign. Now, for Arena multiplayer, the new Catalyst Arena map that was recently announced for Season 2 will be added to multiple playlists on day 1. A classic playlist, King of the Hill, will be returning to multiple playlists in Halo Infinite as well, and Attrition will be added to multiple playlists. Now, in Attrition, they're making a couple of changes, so a revived player will be able to move immediately after spawning back in. They said that the reward should match the risk for reviving somebody, so before, in Attrition, whenever you would revive somebody and you were the person who was being revived, you would just have to stand there for like a second. You couldn't move, so that is a good change to see. Now, the motion tracker or radar will also have its outer edge detection enabled for shooting and sprinting enemies in social playlists. Also, any people in vehicles will be on that little outer ring. You'll be able to see where they are in a general direction. Now, for BTB fans out there, a couple new changes. The Breaker BTB map will be added to matchmaking on day 1, and Jeff Steitzer's voice, the classic announcer for Halo's multiplayer, is returning to call out player earned medals in BTB, and an issue causing asymmetrical or just appearing on one side of the map weapon rack spawns will be addressed. A new change to ranked and how CSR is shown will be made as well with Season 2, so rather than track a player's entire session when you're in ranked, the CSR progression bar will now reflect the progress made from their most recent match, so you could actually tell if you gained or lost CSR instead of it being tied to the whole entire session until you restart your game. Now, they will be addressing some custom games bugs, with more coming down the road as far as fixes. Now, for personal AI and Spartan chatter, there will be balance adjustments made to emphasize what's most important for players, so it sounds like that will be getting decreased, the amount of chatter. And on PC, noticeable stability improvements. The team at 343 has resolved dozens of PC crashes. I know a lot of people still having trouble with PC port of the game, so that is a welcome addition. A big change to the sandbox of the game, one I feel in my soul. If you guys have seen my latest YouTube short about whiffing melees, well, melee fights should now be more consistent, with opponents phasing through each other less and whiffing less when a melee should have connected. We'll go into more detail later in the video about what they're doing exactly to change that. Very interesting stuff. Now, as far as weapon tuning, a global melee damage decrease of 10% on all weapons will require things like the Mangler to land 2 shots and a beatdown for a kill instead of the previous 1 shot and a beatdown for a kill. So basically a Mangler nerf. And the primary fire mode for the Ravager, so the non-charged shot, will see a damage increase. A nice little UI change will be coming for player outlines, so the system will now have options allowing players to modify the opacity and thickness based on your preferences for player outlines, which is definitely a welcome change as well. A couple of changes to equipment. Dropwall will see a slight performance increase, and Overshield will provide slightly more shielding, which is definitely another piece of feedback that I've had. Now, for all my vehicle fans out there, the chopper collision or splatter damage will be increased for fans of the older version of the chopper that was a splattering machine. The Banshee's agility and damage output will also be increased to improve its role as a strike fighter vehicle, and the Warthog and Razorback should be more resistant to flipping and bouncing around with the suspension acting a little bit wonky sometimes. And that basically brings us to the end of the summary of changes being made, but we're going to go into a deep dive now and go into more of the specifics in this video, including some things that weren't going to make it at the start of Season 2 that will be coming in the future of Halo Infinite. Starting with accessibility, there has been feedback for quite a few things, one being the desire for an auto sprint option. 343 says that they've received feedback that folks are looking for more ways to configure movement to be accessible, including sprinting options. They said that the Sandbox team is currently investigating settings that could be created for that. Now, 343 also acknowledged that the UX and UI team is currently investigating and exposing more color options based on pain points for players, so things like damage colors, HUD colors, etc. They are prioritizing exposing those individual settings over a color channel filter, as they've seen feedback from the community that these are more valuable. There's also been desire from the community for an audio visualization feature, so that feature remains the most design and implementation heavy of the accessibility requests. They are in a very early exploratory stage for doing something like this, but they're committed to the design goal of making Halo Infinite fully playable without audio, with the same information that players who play with audio receive for those who have trouble of hearing. Now, I already talked about the shield recharge sound being too loud earlier in the video, but another thing will be getting tweaked as far as audio goes. The dynamo grenade hit detection sound triggers in matchmaking, and that basically acts as a grenade hit marker in ranked, because you can hear a little ticking sound every time it's hitting a Spartan. So this looks to be getting changed for ranked, but it will not be ready by the start of Season 2, but they will be addressing this in a future update. Now, many players have also reported missing sounds from behind them while playing the game with certain headphones. In 343's investigations that they've done, they said that they discovered that this is a specific hardware or platform issue, which also affects other titles, not only Halo Infinite, and therefore cannot be solved by an update to Halo Infinite itself. If you are one of the people that is experiencing this issue, there is a step-by-step troubleshooting page on the Halo support site that may be able to help you out. Now let's talk about some of the multiplayer changes, starting with the Academy. Many players have expressed their want for longer or untimed weapon drills, and 343 says that they agree and we can expect to see endless weapon drills to come in Season 2. Now, a new mode will be making its debut in Season 2 called Elimination, and this mode will show up in matchmaking as a rotational playlist and also be made available in custom games. And yes, this is the mode that is tied to the Medic achievement, and 343 confirms that the achievement will also be made available in custom games. Now, earlier in the video, I talked about the motion tracker or radar changes. There is a new edge functionality for the motion tracker that is going to be enabled in all social playlists. So this means that players who are sprinting, shooting, or operating vehicles, but who are just out of range, will now show up on the outer fringe of the motion tracker. The inside of the motion tracker will continue to detect walking, sprinting, shooting, and operating vehicle players as precise blimps on the radar. To be more specific, the arena motion tracker distance will be 18 meters, with the edge functionality at 30 meters. Now, in Big Team Battle, the distance will be 24 meters with the edge functionality set to be 40 meters. 343 also offers some details on the Breaker BTB map. They said that it features a giant moving laser that cuts across the center of the map and destroys anything that gets caught in its beam. It's a tighter and faster playing BTB map that feels different than anything they currently have in Infinite, and they're excited to play with everyone in BTB right when Season 2 launches. It actually does sound really interesting as far as dynamic elements to maps. Now, a lot of players have expressed a desire to have your fire team show up in your intro cinematic where the Spartans are shown off. So in Season 1, they always appear as part of your squad in the in-game UI as far as the color scheme that you choose for your squad members. Now they're going to be going after the lineup grouping in a future update. This update will prioritize your fire team members appearing in your squads so that you can see your friends within the lineup. With larger size fire teams though, they'll still leave the chance of an odd Spartan out, but in general, you should see yourselves together as you come off of a spawn. Another major feedback point for BTB is when one team gets a powerful vehicle and the other team does not get any chance to combat that with their own powerful vehicle. 343 says that they've identified the root cause for this issue, and as a fix for that gets closer, they will share more information, but please know that they're tracking this and they will get it addressed in a future release. There was also an issue with weapon rack spawns not always being symmetrical in BTB. They said that they've addressed this in the Season 2 build. Instances of uneven weapon spawns on symmetrical placements were not intentional and were due to issues with the settings of those specific weapon racks. Now, in these instances, both teams should have the same weapon in their weapon racks. If you spot any more uneven weapon rack spawns on a symmetrical map, be sure to let them know. Now we could get into the matchmaking feedback section of this video. 343 acknowledges that the ranked mode is an area that they are working on and monitoring closely, and also that there has been a lot of work going on to reduce the difference in the skill between players in competitive matches. Whoever you're getting match made with or against can be quite unbalanced sometimes. As far as a champion rank, which goes for the highest rated Onyx players, that will be getting added in a future season down the road. They also talk about CSR progression and how it's dependent on many factors. For example, the outcome of the match, whether you win or lose, your individual performance, and the relative skill of your teammates and opponents. Another major concern from players in ranked modes is when you lose a teammate and how much that affects your ability to win a match. 343 says that they have a lot of things that they're working on to help mitigate player pain when a player quits or disconnects from a match in ranked. Now, while the changes that they're making won't make the launch of Season 2, the integrity of ranked matches is a high priority at the studio, and they will continue to iterate and improve to ensure the best quality of matches possible. 343 also acknowledged in the long term they're looking at more options for players to have more choices over what they're wanting to play while maintaining healthy matchmaking playlists for everyone in population. Expect more updates on this in the future. They even name dropped something like the match composer from MCC. They also said that they are considering including certain features like a server selection similar to what MCC had, or search preferences filter like Halo 5 had in a future update. Custom Games Browser is another huge feature from MCC that players have wanted to see in Infinite, and they said that it is something they are deeply passionate about as well, and they're happy to say that the team is in the early stages of production for a Custom Games Browser for Halo Infinite. Now, earlier I mentioned that the team at 343 has resolved dozens of crashes for Season 2 for PC players. Now, if you have a high-end machine, you're going to want to hear this as well. Optimization work that improves performance will be a constant goal for the team throughout the lifetime of the game. Internally, for Beyond Season 2, they've started a new focused effort around optimizing the game while playing on high refresh rates, so anything over 120 FPS. This will maintain the same visual quality bar while allowing players to bump their frame rate up compared to what they got in Season 1. They'll continue to share more info as they continue to optimize the game. Now, another major feedback concern for players is cheaters, and they have constantly been working on the anti-cheat to improve it, but they're also working on a new in-game reporting flow so that we can report cheaters and toxic behavior in-game instead of having going to the Halo support site, which is definitely good news. They said that they are also evaluating several different solutions for improving their ability to keep cheaters out of a game once they've detected them. Now we get to my personal #1 issue with Halo Infinite, Desync. They said that they are aware of desync issues related to shot registration and players rubber banding or warping, and working on improvements in all those areas. Specifically for Melee in Season 2, they will have improvements on Melee you can look forward to that resolve some of the warping or phasing that happens when players melee each other. When players melee in Halo Infinite, there is a brief rebound window where they both go airborne and bounce backwards. However, players also have air control during that window. Since you generally hold forward while meleeing, you end up moving forward during that window. Combine that with two players both holding forward, and you may see players phasing through each other. Now, to help reduce those occurrences, they're adjusting the melee rebound behavior, which should lower the possibility of overlapping positions while in close quarter engagements. Another melee fix that they have for Season 2 addresses the melee lunge accuracy. Aiming should better snap towards your target on a successful melee lunge, helping you keep your target in view for successive melees, reducing the need to spin around, and hopefully reduce the instances of whiffing a melee, which can typically occur when the target is towards the edge of your screen. Now, while talking about melee, I mentioned earlier in the video that there will be a 10% global nerf to melee damage across all weapons, which will also effectively nerf the Mangler to now be a 2-shot and then a beatdown for a kill. Well, the BR in ranked will still maintain its melee damage, and that's the only weapon that is not being changed to ensure that it stays a 2-shot beatdown, which I rarely ever get in ranked anyways. 343 also acknowledged that they're tracking balancing issues with the Pulse Carbine, the Plasma Pistol, and the Commando, and they are aware that they're all underperforming. After the Mangler, Ravager, and Melee changes for Season 2 are put into the game, they're going to evaluate the impact of those weapons on the meta of the sandbox and make adjustments to the other weapons as necessary in a future update. Now, back when the flights were out, I talked about the gravity hammer, and one change that I would make to it being the melee. When you click the melee button, doesn't use ammo like it did in the old games, but it also has that same wind-up animation that you would if you just press the shoot button. And I didn't think that this should be the case, especially when you go to melee somebody quickly. You should be able to have the option to hit with the hilt of the gravity hammer, and it seems that they've heard that feedback and they will be looking to implement it in a future update. Now, speaking on weapons that are performing as they should, another piece of feedback 343 has gotten from the community is about the rocket launcher and the damage that it feels inconsistent, and I can personally agree with that. They are working to improve the rocket launcher splash damage to make it feel more consistent and reliable, so that is also really good news. Now we can talk about movement in the game, and there's been a desire from the community to have increased physics impulses to help with things like grenade jumping. Now, regarding the desire for increased physics impulses, that's something that the team is aware of, and that's a sensitive area between capturing the fun and legacy physics players expect in a Halo game and balancing around a competitive shooter in a way that feels exciting but maintains consistency. Now, they're not talking about Halo being a competitive shooter built from the ground up to be competitive. Halo is naturally a competitive shooter. That's what they're talking about. So they said that pushing this too far results in players being thrown around too much by enemy grenades, exacerbating existing grenade spam issues that are already in the game. They think they have a good middle ground between those two aspects, but as always, they will continue to monitor and tune as needed. Another hotly debated topic among the community is player collision, or lack thereof, in Halo Infinite. Now, 343 said the decision behind this was to turn off for allies to reduce frustrating moments of getting hung up on friendlies in tight spaces, or backing into allies and feeling like you're hitting a wall. They do feel like this keeps things cleaner and lets combat flow more naturally. However, they are aware of the community's sentiment and are discussing future mitigations to player collision. They also want to include making it an option that players can switch on and off in custom games. Now we can talk about aiming in the game, and they do go into detail on how some players feel that mouse and keyboard have an advantage over controller, while controller players say mouse and keyboard players have the advantage over them. I think they both have their positives and negatives. Obviously, sensitivity and preciseness of aiming and controlling recoil goes a long way for mouse and keyboard players. However, close range engagements is definitely, and strafing is definitely better, in my opinion, with a controller and better suits Halo. 343 says that they'll always be monitoring this and making sure that both inputs feel viable, so stay tuned for any kind of changes made to that, but really nothing specific to report at this time. They also talked about mouse players having the scroll wheel to change weapons on mouse feels inconsistent, and it could lead to a player accidentally swapping back to the original weapon. And they said that they're targeting a fix for that after Season 2. Now, there has long been a rumor among the Halo community on PC that when it comes to aim assist, there are times when aim assist will stop mid-game, or when an opponent's shield breaks, or when jumping. Now, I haven't really looked into it too much because I don't want to start having more issues with the game and start to headcase why I lose fights, but they said that when it comes to aim assist, there are no intended moments where aim assist turns off on shield break or jumping. However, they said that they have seen players report that this could be happening under certain conditions, and they are investigating this issue. Another piece of player feedback is that weapon zoom magnification does not properly correlate with sensitivity settings. They said that they've also seen conversations online about aim sensitivity while zoomed in. Due to feedback they've received ahead of launch, the default zoom sensitivities in Halo Infinite are indeed slightly slower than previous Halos to allow for more fine-tuned control. However, since being able to replicate the feeling of those games is critical, players can match previous settings by adjusting their zoom sensitivities to the following, and you guys can see it on screen right now if you want the more classic Halo feel. The final thing we'll talk about in this video, I know it's been a long one, but there's so many details in this blog post, is going to be the UI. So, a lot of people have said that vertical menus would improve the customization process for the UI in Halo Infinite. And while 343 says that they agree that their customization presentation needs improvement and have been putting together a plan over time for improving that experience, there will be quality of life improvements to the existing flow prioritized for the near term, while also making larger efforts like menu layout and navigational changes to upcoming feature releases. Now, during the flights, challenges appeared on the pause menu. The reason this was removed was because there were larger system limitations that prevented them from displaying incremental challenge progress during a match. This would often lead players to think their progress wasn't being tracked. While they sort out how to better achieve the original intent, they will be bringing a simpler, more static list of the current challenges back into the pause menu so that players can use it as a quick reference in a match. Another change that is coming in a future update is having your backpack or secondary grenade visible in your HUD in multiplayer, so that is a nice change as well. Now, speaking on HUD, customization options is something the community has requested a lot, and they said that options to make certain aspects of the HUD layout more configurable are actively being worked on right now. This is a ways off, but their first target is to allow players to choose to display their equipment next to their radar, similar to Reach in Halo 4. Now, allowing us to mute players from the back button scoreboard during gameplay is currently being worked on. This will be implemented as part of the larger effort to enhance the player reporting or anti-cheat features that I talked about earlier in the video. And that's it. This is the end of today's video. I'll have a video out soon detailing some of the turbulent development at 343, some more insight from the community manager sketch at 343 Really transparent stuff, really interesting stuff. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully have it up tomorrow if I'm feeling any better. But thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. If you guys want to ever come watch me play Halo Infinite on Twitch, twitch.tv/thepatmangaming, or interact with me on Twitter, twitter.com/thepatmangaming. I hope to catch you on either a previous video of mine or a future video of mine. Until that time comes, I'm your boy Patman, and I'm out.